All right. Hey, Bill.
John, how are you?
Not too bad. How's your day going?
I'm good. What a treat to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
How are things in Oregon?
Good, good. Weather's real nice. We got a little hot spell so far. It's been real dry. Hopefully, it won't be another bad fire season. Southern Oregon's been pretty bad for that
Oh,
lately.
really? Like, does it burn a lot, or just like in isolated areas? How does that work?
Uh, Thousands of acres. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, been some big fires, and we end up breathing a lot of the smoke. Timberlands destroyed, even homes. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Don't know what God's doing with all that, but it's definitely kind of difficult situation.
Sending a message, you think? Is there a message involved?
Could be, and I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but this area, Southern Oregon, is one of the best places in the world to grow marijuana. There's one other place, I believe it's Italy. We've had some Italians show up here in the area, and so there's some sort of connection there. But I don't know. I don't want to jump to say that that's it, but it's certainly a wicked thing that's going on. But it's part of our sin-stained culture.
That's
They
right.
just yeah,
Drink it down like water, like Paul Washer says.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, tell us about yourself a little bit, where you're from, and growing up, and so forth.
Well, I was born in Portland, Oregon, um, northwest part of Oregon
Yeah.
in 1959. Didn't grow up in a Christian home. A lot of times we out in the streets, people, well, you grew up in a Christian home. That's why you're a Christian. No, I didn't. I was raised Catholic. My mom was a pretty devout Catholic. My dad was more into the political part of it. So she taught me some values and things over the years, but certainly didn't know Jesus Christ uh, at all. And so, as usual in my teen years, just really rebelled against God, visibly, outwardly, and just my sin nature came out and really started manifesting itself. And won't go into the details of that, but it was just it's horrible. And but in my early 20s, I had Christians invite me to church, and I went once in a while. They even thought I was a Christian because I had gone to church and I hung out with Christians and went to Bible studies, and even was part of a Christian singles group for a while in Central Oregon. And so, like, yeah, I'm in. I'm a Christian. If somebody asked me, and then every once in a while, somebody would say, "Do you know Jesus?" And I would say things like, "Well, I read the Bible. I know about Jesus. No, John, but do you know Jesus?" Like, I don't know what you mean. So it was years later, 1994, January 22nd to be exact, um, in Klamath Falls, Oregon. I was attending a Southern Baptist church there, and hearing long gospel preached. Pretty faithful preacher there, Kent Berry, from Texas originally. So he had this great, lovely Texas accent, and so really, I was just broken after months of hearing his message. And I was invited to church by a fellow musician and a Christian guy, Evan Cronister, lives in Arkansas. And so, hey, if you're listening, Evan, thank you so much for inviting me and discipling me early on. But I got saved, and it was on a Thursday night, and I was out walking my dog, and I'd heard the message of the gospel. I'd heard, about sin and salvation and hell and judgment and all that. It's like, wow, I was really broken, and just cried out to the Lord. I didn't really remember what I said, but it was like, I give up. Fly the why the fly the white flag. I didn't know what happened, and so met with my pastor a couple of days later and explained what was going on. And I was dating a Mormon gal at the time. That's a whole another story for another time. But needless to say, that ended. Praise God. a few years later, Lord brought Leanne into my life, and we've been married almost 24 years. And so praise God. And so anyway, getting back to my conversion, I immediately had a desire to reach the lost, but I didn't know how. I'd never been discipled in that. Even in, I'd gotten some discipling and by friends and at my church, Sunday school things, learning the Bible, but nothing in the way of evangelism really till a few years later. Get little bits and pieces. Southern Baptists have typically been known to be the most evangelistic denomination in America. And so I got a little bit of teaching here and there, but nothing really that I could sink my teeth into, so to speak, until a few years later. And I met some folks when I moved to Southern Oregon that took me out and said, hey, we're going to be going to Ashland to go hand out tracts and witness to people. Do you want to go? And I, yeah, okay. Or hey, we're going to go to White City and do some door to door, hand out tracts and witness to people. You want to go? Yeah, okay. And so I was very encouraged by that and challenged. And so a friend named Greg Beals discipled me along in what I found out was Way of the Master. And he had talked to a couple Mormons using the law and gospel. And I went, what in the world was that? I've never seen anything like that. I'd never heard of that before. What did you do? I said, well, I just took them to the law to show them how exceedingly sinful their sin is and how they need a savior, the real Jesus, not the brother of Lucifer, that the Mormons believe in, but the real Jesus. And so I went, wow, can you teach me this? I go, oh, yeah. So, and a couple of years later, after using that method, so to speak, I felt really burdened to start a group called RV Saltshakers, and that was in 2008. And I just discovered Facebook like a year before. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'll put this together. I'm not sure how this is going to go, but originally just started as a page to invite people. Say, hey, invite friends. Hey, we're going to go to Ashland to do some street ministry, or we're going to go to downtown Medford, or we're going to go to a festival and share the gospel with folks. So that got really exciting, just to see people gather and come alongside. So that was really as RV Saltshakers. That's kind of where my testimony led, and growing in the Lord, having people disciple me, listening and watching what they're doing, seeing how that correlated with passages in the Bible, how Jesus witnessed, how he preached, how the disciples, the apostles preached, and so that helped me a lot. And still got a long way to go, but I felt like I've grown a lot through discipling of other men that have been witnessing for years.
Wow. Well, let's back up for a second. You sound like a very privileged person in a sense to have had so many people reach out to you and invite you to church. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, especially getting invited to a solid church. It was at the time anyway. I know I'd gotten invited to some churches where I just go, wow, those people are really happy. I don't know what's going on there, but are people supposed to be falling down on the ground? This is before I was converted. So I'm like, let's see, where's the door? I need to get out. And other ones where I'd be invited and it was like, is this a funeral service or is this a church service? So somewhere in the between, there were a few of them that like, wow, I'm enjoying this. This is good. And then looking back going, well, I don't really know what that looked like looking through the lens of an unsaved John, because I'm an enemy of God going into a church, and so trying to make that appealing to me, I think is the wrong thing. And so somebody gets invited to church and they get saved at church. Hallelujah! I didn't get saved in a church. I was actually at the time of my conversion, I was going to a church, First Baptist in Clement Falls, but I was actually out walking my dog at night, and the Lord just, I don't even really remember what happened. It's just something changed, and from there on, it was amazing. I wanted to pray all the time. I wanted to be in my Bible. I wanted to hang out with believers. I actually had to to beg some fellow students at the time, younger guys and their families, to disciple me. And they said, yeah, well, come on over. We'll do Bible and coffee on Tuesday evening. So we did that, and that was great. But yeah, Bill, it is a real privilege to have folks come alongside and disciple you. And I was hungry to learn. Like I really need to reach these lost people, because when I was a brand new believer, I was like a bull in a china shop. You need to accept Jesus, you're going to burn in hell. And then I was like, oh, let's see, that's not really the greatest approach. You're just breaking a lot of things, and you're making a lot of noise. And then I come to find out that God is sovereign. He saves people, and it's not up to me to save people. And but I thought it was at first. That was my impression. I think because I'd gone to churches where it was yeah, you got to reach people, they're going to hell. Didn't really know how, but it felt like the pressure was on me. And now I realize, oh man, I want to please my Lord, have compassion for the lost, and reach out to them. But yeah, Bill, I'm pretty firm in my belief that the church is not for unbelievers. Yeah, if somebody happens to come and get saved, get invited, nothing wrong with that. I don't think. I don't see it in the New Testament. And so that's why, we're part of a church now that if somebody came in, they're a non-believer, we'd say, hey, come on in. But we're not going to say, oh, you can't come in. You have to prove to us you're a believer. But generally, we just have folks that we invite that are believers, and particularly active in their faith. That's what we want to gather on, to encourage each other to be active.
So what do you think, and where you were raised and lived, did you just happen to know a lot of Christian people, or was this particular church really aggressive evangelistically? I've never heard a testimony like that when someone was invited so much and discipled so proactively.
It was oh, sorry.
Right, go ahead.
No, I just say, it was really sovereign move of God, Bill. When I look back, it didn't make any sense to me at the time, but I was into playing bluegrass music, and I still am. I love it. And so I was playing bluegrass with some local guys there. One guy happened to be a bass player and a singer, Evan, and really solid guy. I really liked him a lot. And he invited myself and another non-Christian guy that we used to jam with over there in Clement Falls, invited us to church for a function. And Joe, the guitar player, he ended up not hanging around, but I really liked the people, and I started going to church there for months. And so, yeah, to see people, I know they have a good solid Sunday school program at Southern Baptist churches. And most of them, I'd say a lot of them had at the time very good outreach programs, training and things like that. I don't know how it is so much anymore. I haven't been a part of that circle. Maybe John Smith, Brett White, some of the local pastors here that do outreach. Maybe they would know more about that. But sorry, incoming call. I had to decline that.
That's all right.
But yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. So they invited you, and you started. How much, like, at what point did, well, I know this is not a question you can directly exactly answer, but when you look back, how much of that process, from introduction to meeting Evan to the discipleship, really brought to bear that moment when you're walking your dog? What was the most important part of that? I know it all works together, but just.
Yeah, good question, because there wasn't any discipling going on until after I got saved, because I didn't really want to be discipled. I just I liked the people. They were real friendly, seemed real genuine at the church. The music was a little old style for me, but I hung in there, and I liked the Sunday school. It seemed real informative, real helpful. But I think, the people made a difference, and they were speaking into my life. Like I said, I don't really remember what they said to me. But I do know when I got saved that God saved me. In fact, like 2 days later, I think it was, the pastor, quote, led me to the Lord. We went through the sinner's prayer, and the Four Spiritual Laws, or sometimes they call them the Four Spiritual Flaws booklet. And I kind of went, I don't know. He says, well, does that make sense? And I go, not really. Did you feel any different after we prayed? And I go, I like to say yes, but no, I didn't. But Thursday, something happened.
I guess.
God did something. I don't know what it was, but I'm different. And I found this verse. I shared it with one of the pastors. He kind of laughed. He says, well, it's 1 Corinthians 5:17. If anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. Have you ever seen that verse before? And he goes, smiles. He goes, yeah, I've seen that one before. Duh, but I'm, just a, wet behind the ears, a new believer. And so I'm all excited, and they were very gracious to not say, hey, John, yeah, that's a really basic verse there for new creations in Christ. So, yeah, it's hard to remember all the way back there before I got saved, but after I got saved, I remember the discipling and asking questions, who was Methuselah, and why did Jesus say this? And the ark. Wow, that's an amazing story. But I never, like some people say, well, I've been a Christian I'd been a Christian for 2 years, and it took me a long time to get the thing of Jesus being God. And I never had things like that, or that all those animals, there's no way God could fit all those on the ark. It was more like, wow, that's amazing. So when I hear stories like that, where they say, oh, I couldn't grasp that Jesus was God. I don't know. I just never had that problem. I just went, wow, that's amazing. Cool. But amazing. I didn't go, no, I don't believe that. You got to show it, So, but I do remember the discipleship. It was very, very helpful. And I think that's really lacking nowadays. And part of it is because the lack of willingness for people that, supposedly got saved, but they have no desire to follow Jesus' path and his path to witness, to learn. And so they have this thing called follow-up in modern evangelism, which I learned about that early on. I'm like, what in the world is this? And I've seen it many times, sadly, in place where you go and people made, quote, decisions for Christ. And, I gave my heart to Jesus or whatever. And then you follow up with them and they go like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I prayed a prayer. Yeah. And they don't have no desire to talk about the things of God. So I'm like, okay, that's really different from my story. Because I had this, hey, would you please disciple me? I really need help, please. You don't see that much that often. So, but discipleship is so important to me.
Cool.
Really.
All right, well, let's move into the ministry stuff. So before we get to talk more about that, what is your website?
It is www.rv Saltshakers, lowercase, all one word, and RV for Rogue Valley. That's where we're at, Southern Oregon. So Grants Pass, based in Grants Pass, and beyond,
All right.
And so we
.com or .org?
.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we're on Facebook too, or Faceplant, sometimes people call it.
So you started to talk about it a little bit, but so tell us how you were talking about getting into it, and then just give us a big snapshot of getting into the work, and then people coming along, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, right, Bill. Yeah, it was inspiring to have people invite me to go out and do ministry, because I was trying to do stuff on my own and thinking like, what do I do? I've done a little bit of door to door with people from church, and just spotty here and there, and handed out tracts a bit, but didn't really know where to get tracts. So what's a good gospel tract, things like that. So when I started with RV Saltshakers, I started discovering good gospel tracts. So my favorite is Living Waters down there in Southern California, and then Track Planet, and then 1 Million Tracks, via Bazoogan Track Ministry. But those four suppliers, I think, just have some great tracks. And then we have local guy, John Peterman, gospel outreach signs and banners. Oh, he makes tracts and banners and signs and stuff. But yeah, getting started with RV Saltshakers, it was really a lot about equipping others, encouraging them to come out. And then later on, I found it was a little bit more of challenging people, because we get what we call the doing it wrongers. If you want to look up hashtag doing it wrongers, DON ITWRONGERS, doing it, hashtag doing it wrongers. If you want to look that up and see what happens when you're out there and people are saying you're doing it wrong, and you ask them the classic thing, so what do you do? And they say they don't do anything, and that's been a frustration. So there's the challenges, but then there's also the encouragement, which has been real satisfying, getting folks coming alongside and going, hey, when's the next event? That's my favorite question. When's the next event? You know, and a friend of mine, J.R. Stevens, he has been an evangelist for quite a number of years. He says, you know, it's not an event. Evangelism is a lifestyle. And we coined the term AAA club, anyone, any place, anytime. So have tracks on you all the time. Look for opportunities, even if you don't have a track, conversations. And so RV Saltshakers was about posting events like, hey, looking out on the internet, or even just hearing it from people. Hey, there's a festival going on in Shady Cove. They have it's a fishing festival or whatever, a boat festival, and they're going to be people there. So, hey, it's going to be this date. Let's go with gospel tracks. And later on, we started doing more of open air preaching, and started doing signs and banners, which found that those are very, very effective, particularly if you're at an event that's really loud, or there's a lot of background noise, and preaching you can't be heard really well, or maybe there's just so much interaction with people. Maybe like BLM events, we've gone to those, not Bureau of Land Management, for Black Lives Matter. Gonna make that really clear. But go there, and they're so in your face and all over you that just standing there with a sign and then waiting for things to settle down, and then have conversations with the ones that are willing to talk. So that's changed a little bit over the years, from just handing out tracts and witnessing one-to-one to signs, banners, open air preaching. But it's also opened up a lot of venues. So it's been really encouraging to have to be able to invite people along, meet new people, introduce people to other people that have the same passion, that want to fulfill the Great Commission, and witness to people in whatever way that they feel called to. You know, not everybody's called to stand up on a box and preach. Not everybody's called to hold a sign or be at an abortion mill, or maybe even hand out tracts. But everybody's called to do the Great Commission in some way. Not just, and you know, maybe some will disagree, but not just men. It's men, women, and children. Everyone. If you've been saved, then you're not just obligated, but your love should cause you to reach out to the lost. So that's a lot of what RV Saltshakers is encouraging people to get involved in the Great Commission, and getting them tracts, getting them resources, even dragging them along, inviting them along, and just see, what does it look like? What are we doing out there, and how can you get involved? You know, monkey see, monkey do. Come along and watch, and hopefully you'll get a passion for whatever part of it that we're doing.
What kind of events when you go to an event, what kind of events do you do?
Oh boy, there's a lot, and it's changed, as you know, because your ministry has changed a little bit this last year. So we used to do a lot more of just festivals, like, for instance, Winston Dillard Melon Festival up there in Winston, Oregon, just north of us. A real family-friendly event centered around melons, you know. And so there's a parade where you can track. We go set up a booth there and man the booth, and it would be several days, like 3 days, I think that one is. And people would come and we'd talk to them. We'd send people out on the grounds to hand out tracts and look for conversations. Our two big ones in Southern Oregon are the Pear Blossom Festival, tens of thousands of people, big parade that has hundreds of entries and a booth. And that's a 2-day event, and just tons of people, lots of people. Open air preaching, started doing that a few years back. And then Boatnik, which we just came off of that 5-day event. Basically about almost 50 hours of evangelism, right there in a park in Grants Pass. The second biggest, it's called Boatnik. It's a Boatnik, like kind of like Beatnik. And so it's about the second biggest event in Oregon. Huge. And granted, that was throttled down quite a bit this year. We didn't get to do a booth, so we did open air preaching. We had signs, gospel tracts. You get out hundreds, if not thousands, of gospel tracts. Folks like Mesa Goodnight, his group north from Roseburg, Winston area, came in and handed out tracts, did open air preaching, banner ministry. So a lot of events like that. And this last year, we started going to more of the things like BLM events, because they were happening, especially in the summer, and reaching a whole different crowd of people. They're typically LGBT friendly, pro-abortion, pro-euthanasia, a lot of what we would call the left, not to get political, but more of that, where they're exhibiting, our depraved nature. And so those are very different, because as soon as you arrive, people are very, very hostile. And previous years, we'd done gay pride. We did a number of gay pride, the homosexual festivals, and those are very intense. The worst one as far as intensity we did in the previous year, 2019, was the Eugene Pride. And you can see some of those videos online at rbsaltshakers.com or on the Facebook page if you're interested. They're pretty intense, but on the other hand, we've had some great gospel conversations with people, because typically you get to those events, it flares up and gets crazy for a little while, then it settles down. I know Matthew Wiersma had mentioned that, about that cycle where it just kind of goes, it starts out crazy, and then it gets mellow, and it gets crazy and mellow for hours. This goes on. And when you recognize that, you see that coming, you go, okay, just wait for it. And then, okay, you had a question, ma'am? Yeah, why are you here? Oh, great question. And boom, you're off. You got a great conversation. You just have to wait for the people that, they're up in your face yelling at you and stuff. And you just have to, just love on them and be patient. So yeah, a lot of different events. So that's just a sampling of the different type of things we do. We do some door-to-door ministry, sign ministry, just on random intersections that busy go out and stand on the corner with signs and banners. And then, of course, abortion mill ministry, or abolition ministry, we've been doing for a number of years now. We have three abortion mills in our area. One does surgical abortion. So not many people will go out to those. It's not. It's a pretty acrid, difficult environment, because you have everything from the extreme of somebody coming up and saying, I'm going to make a donation in your name. What's your name? I'm going in there, and they're smoking hot. They're steaming hot. And the other people just walk by and go, oh, have a horrible look on their face. And you say, well, what do you think of the sign? And they go, well, I'm against abortion, but that sign, that's horrible. I go, yeah, great conversation. And you're going to talk to somebody like that differently than the lady that's going in to make a donation. So that's kind of a mysteries we do.
Y'all always seem to be really busy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sadly, it is. We're busy doing that.
So three things, and how much time you got?
Oh, probably another five minutes or so.
All right, let's hit on three things. One, going to Mexico. Two, what's it like to be in Oregon? You've been to other places. Like, if someone's never been in that environment, what do you see that's substantially different? And the last thing is, give us a couple tips that you've learned over the years that you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah. So like the difference culturally maybe be
You're evangelizing
between.
Oregon versus other place you've been. What do you see as a big difference?
Okay, yeah, because Mexico was very different when we went down there. You and I and the team,
Oh yeah,
Mexico City.
I love it.
Yeah, and got out. I gave out a whole suitcase of folletos en español. You know, the Spanish gospel tracts. It was wonderful. Really, only had one encounter with a guy that was hostile to my open air preaching, and you know, commented about how my Spanish was pretty bad, and I just said, "Oh, lo siento, señor, yo estoy aprendiendo. I'm sorry, sir. I'm learning." You know, and you counseled me just to, you know, just to be courteous and not get into it with people, and particularly not talk about Catholicism, because that down there is, you know, as you explained, it's a cultural thing. Many of the people are culturally Catholic, so you know, don't talk about Mary, don't talk about the Pope. And so I just stuck with law and gospel. And so here we have, you know, compared to Mexico, here in Southern Oregon, we have a huge culturally, uh, it's pretty radical. Not maybe as much as say San Francisco or Seattle or Portland even, but we do have a significant pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, pro-drug culture here. And so when you get up and open air preach or even hand out a gospel tract, you encounter some real hate. You know, so and I warn people, say, you know, this doesn't often happen. In just handing out gospel tracts, you know, like, "Good morning, sir. Did you get one?" But once in a while it does. And so just beware. They may say, "Oh, no, thanks." And they may say, "Oh, you're one of those hateful bigot Christians, you're homophobic, misogynistic," and they go on and on. And I just counsel people to say, "Oh, well, have I met you? Oh, well, oh, you don't want a gospel tract? Okay, well, hey, have a nice day." And
That's good.
just go off and continue on your way, and don't battle with them, because it's kind of rare. And so we've been talking a lot about this as a church of how to address people that are hostile to you. And I know, as you had mentioned when we were open air preaching, to not argue and be um, engaged so much people individual when you're open air preaching. Let somebody else do that, or just ignore them and go on, because they want to stop your preaching, right? That's typically what, when you're open air preaching, they want to stop you. I've even had people tell me, "Well, I got to stop you from open air preaching, at least, John." You know, I'm like, "Oh, okay." um, but yeah, being courteous and kind to people, and expressing how much you care about their souls. So we don't want them to go to hell, and that's why we're out doing what we do. You know, but people are just going to be hostile. But sometimes, even going like to LGBT fest, the biggest encounter, the biggest speed bump, I guess you'd say, when you get there is why have you come all here to hate on us? So getting over that, to let them understand that we drove this 4 or 5 hours to get here because we love you. We want you to be saved from sin, death, and hell. That's why we're here, because we love you guys. We can't hate you. We don't hate you. If we did hate you, it would show that we're not Christians, right? Um, and so trying to get them to understand that is a little bit of a hurdle. Once you're over that, then it really is. It's amazing the conversations that open up to that.
That's cool. All right, John, good job. Last thing, what's your next upcoming event? Something to pray for you for.
Well, let's see. We don't have a whole lot of events, but there is an event. It's a LGBT festival in Eugene. I don't recall the date. I believe it's in August, and
Okay.
that's been our most intense one. So please pray for that, for laborers to come, you know, and not have the fear, because it definitely is a fear factor there. But our continuing, I guess this is one where we have a lot of turbulence here in Grants Pass with our growers market. And because people are really gotten hostile about open air preaching and the signs, and even gospel tracts, they've complained, and they just really hate what we do. So would appreciate that mostly souls would be converted, that God would convert people, and then they'd be out there holding a sign, preaching the gospel, handing out tracts, sharing Jesus. and not on our side, but on Jesus's side. So appreciate that. That happens every Saturday until October. So appreciate getting back into that, and prayer for covering for that.
Okay, we'll do it. John, great to be with you.
Well, thanks, Bill.
It's a treat. All right, man. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for taking the time to share.
All right. Well, God bless you, Bill. Thanks for all that you do. I so appreciate your ministry.
Praise the Lord. We'll be in touch soon. Talk to you soon. Have a good day.
All right.
Okay,
God bless you. You have a great day too.